Righto, picture this. You're 49 years old. You're just starting your investment journey. You've loved property investing. You've been watching it on the sidelines, but you actually haven't invested. 4 years later, 4 years, you're now doing a 22-lot subdivision and also bought, 10, 15 properties yourself already. That is the story that we're going to cover off today. This is a story about how it's really interesting because she started so late in life and has been able to achieve so much quickly. But what the value that I see is if you're in your 20s and 30s and looking to get started in property investing, this is the inspiration that you need because she has crushed it. She got educated. She took on the risk and she's getting fully rewarded for it. The session we have tonight is with Beck 10. And at the end of the session, we're like, hey, how can people reach out to you? It's like, for what? Like, I just do my own property developments and I have my, do I give my mobile number? No. What do I do? And that's what we do. Hey everyone, my name is Joe Tucker and together with Jeff Miles, we created Oz Property Investment. That's what you're listening to. It's Australia's largest property investment community. We've got over 86,000 property investors and each week we interview property experts, investors, developers, people that have some interesting stuff to say so that you can take the wisdom and implement it in your own life. And if you're just listening to this and not implementing, that's great too. But you've got to take action. And that's what you're going to take away from this session. How can I convert my wants and desires into something that's actually tangible and actionable? Anyway, that's what I took away from this. And I'm going to shut up. Let's just go and jump in.
Beck, I want to know, for somebody who's in a similar situation to what you were, who has a partner doesn't have the risk tolerance, what is there a way of overcoming that, or is it you just have to go and do it?
The thing I didn't have back then was I didn't have any way of education. I didn't have anyone to ask, how can I do this? What do I do? I just didn't have it.
Yeah.
There was nothing except for Jane Summers' book and the magazine.
Yeah.
I didn't know anybody who was in property. I didn't know, and even what you guys have done with this networking is so important when it comes to educating yourself in property. And of course, there's so many. If you really want to accelerate quickly, education, and there's so many fantastic courses out there. Well, no matter what your level of risk is, or no matter what your interest is, whether you want to do developing, whether you want to do renovation, whether you want to do subdivisions, no matter what you want to do, you'll find someone who's done it before you and you can follow them.
Yeah, I think that's such a key point because even just the motivation of meeting somebody and being like, what? You did a 45-lot subdivision? What? How do you even get in? Oh, well, actually, it wasn't that hard because I built I built this, and this on top of it. And then all of a sudden it's like, yeah, but we're just having a beer together and you're like a smart. I'm kind of smart. Like you're not 10x smarter than me. How come you've got 10x the result? And those kind of conversations make you realize that what is actually possible. And the cool thing is we have a really big opportunity here in Australia. We are so undersupplied right now for property, and that is not going to change in the next 3 years. In 5 years' time, will it change? Potentially, yeah. I think we'll start building and blah, blah. We'll start getting kids excited about going into the trades. But right now, no one's excited about going into trades. We're not building enough houses. Materials are too expensive. The cost to replace an asset. I was chatting with a builder today because we're doing a rooming house. I'm like, how much does it cost to build a house? He's like, $650,000. And I'm like, but I can buy established houses for $650,000. Then I'm getting the land for free. He's like, yeah, pretty much. Like that's it. So there's a big opportunity here.
What would your top 3 tips for somebody renovating if they already had the trades sorted? What are those tips?
Oh,
okay.
See, my husband's a renovator, but I think the main thing he would do is he would say, and what I would say is buy well. First of all, you got to buy well, which is a no-brainer, which is, I hope I'm not insulting you by saying that, but the first thing is so important. You have to buy well. You have to make sure you're buying low in a suburb with a median value that's well above the price you're paying, because you're going to, you're going to, and see if you can get, assess. I mean, if you've got trade sorted, you hopefully you'll have an idea of assessing a property and what it needs in a renovation. Renovations are tough. They can. Yeah, I mean, I don't want to be disparaging of renovations, but I'm a developer. But renovations can be tough if you.
So what's changed? Well, what's changed? Why has it gotten tougher, or is it just tough in general, or?
I think there's a lot of people now doing renos. So we did a fantastic reno. We bought a unit really close to one of the universities here and a hospital. We bought in at 180 grand, and at the time, while we had it, it took 6 weeks to do the reno, and we made and we sold it for 380. So but that was a real unicorn, I think. It just happened to be, we bought in right when units and it was going up, and we sold really well. Yep. Since then, there's no way you could find a unit. Even the crappy units, we've gone to auctions and they're selling at ridiculous prices. So I think there's a lot of people that cottoned on to the whole. The main thing about renos, I think, is the more you can do yourself, the more you will make. Yeah. So
that really is the leverage, and it's actually worth it. Like, I think actually doing a reno yourself now is worth it, because trade costs are so expensive, and then you can make your margin. But if you're not picking up a hammer and a spanner and I don't know, I need a spanner, but like the paintbrush, then it's really tough to make renovations work. Like 2020, 2021, 2, 3, 4, we were doing a lot of renovations and it made sense. And now it's like so hard with trade costs. But I really like what you noted there, like the median value, and you buy below the median value. Because I was talking with an investor the other day, and he's like, oh my gosh, look at this property in this suburb. The median value is 500,000. And he's like, I really want to buy this. It's 770,000. And the way I kind of explained it was like, look, I'm like, it's probably not the best thing to be doing. What you want to be doing is buying like around the median and below. Because if you buy something at 770, that is the most expensive product, and you're pulling up the market. Whereas when you buy at the median and below, you are being pulled by the market. So instead of buying 770, you buy the $500,000 and $600,000 properties, and then you will get dragged up by those people. Whereas when you buy at the top of the market, so I would prefer to buy a 770 at a $900,000 market or $750,000 market, and then
never rely on market growth.
What are some of the non-negotiables in your deals? Because let's start getting to the brass tacks around how you actually structure your investing.
Okay, so I suppose the non-negotiables are things like width of the block, slope, zone, trees as well. I mean, I'm looking at the moment we're developing property. So when we'll look at a property from a like infrastructure, where is there sewer and water out the front? Are there any regulated or significant trees? What is the slope like? Because retaining is really expensive. What is the zoning? Obviously, the buying price, the selling price. I mean, they're sort of the non-negotiables for development. For a reno, it would be more about the median price versus the end sale price and the cost of the reno. So, a lot of infrastructure stuff to do, or then you're looking at ridiculous costs. But my non-negotiables for a development site really and price per square meter. And of course, there's a lot more involved with development, because you need to make sure you've got a good team. You've got to have the town planner, you've got to have your a good builder that you can work with. And those sort of things are found before you even start looking at a site. So.
Oh, okay. So hang on, can you talk through that? Because one of the words that you just said was cost per square meter. What does that actually mean?
Okay, so it depends on the size of the property as well. So for example, we bought a 2 properties, and we're doing a 22 lot subdivision, and so we're paying a lot less per square meter because it's such a big site.
Bulk discount.
Than your normal and then your normal 600 square meter block, which and that of course means value for money, really. So if that makes sense.
It does. Yeah. It's kind of it's as simple as, okay, how much is the price and how many meters, and then I suppose determining what would the land value actually sell for if you subdivide it into, let's say, 400 or 500 square meter blocks, because then you're seeing a disparity. It's the arbitrage that is evident in a lot of property. Can you make money on that? If you can, then how much you can pay for the site.
Yeah. It's all that's it.
So Beck, I want to, because we talked about fast tracking freedom. So what is, because we haven't really hit on actually the strategy. Like, what is the goal with doing all this developing? Like, what is the end game? I want to know that.
Well, the end game for me is, well, for starters, I realised I had to find a strategy that I could fast track growth and results with property investing. And the end game is residual income. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's everyone's end game with property, isn't it? And
so is it sort of getting to a stage where you're doing a 40 lot subdivision or 20 or whatever the number is, 6, and then building out 6 and then keeping one of that in that development plot? Is that building up the war chest? Is that kind of the strategy or approach you're taking?
That's pretty much what we are getting to now. So at least I was actually talking to a girlfriend today who's a developer, and we're saying, like, renovating, developing, it's fun, but it's still a job. Like, you're doing a job, and you can get really good at it, but it's actually you're making chunk cash, but if you're not in there doing it, it's not paying you. So the idea is to at least keep something. I would really like to be able to invest. I love following, like Mark Baker and Ian Ugarte and all the rooming house dudes. Like, that really excites me. Adelaide's really shit with rooming houses at the moment, so I've been really, really following what they're doing, and I think that's a really good return on investment. I like the idea of owning property that's low cost and a high return, whether that's an apartment block with only one lot of land tax, whether that's rooming houses, whether that's NDIS.
Well, just be careful of that one lot of land tax. Like, some governments, some states will charge you per unit, even if it's on one title. So just
really?
don't get.
This is an area where I'm really still learning, and even commercial. Like, I love this, watching you guys with Steve. So that's my end game. I just had to hurry up and get to a point where I actually can invest. But that's definitely my end game is the investing and the residual income.
Yeah. Have you set yourself a time? I mean, if maybe I'm prying too much of it, have you set yourself a time frame? Is it like 2030? Is it 2035? What's
my end goal is 2030. I want to have at least $6 million. I'm telling you now, I want to have $6 million worth of property investment in. So at minimum 6% return.
So your advice for a 30-year-old, right? Like, your son, he's probably around that 25 to 35 or something like that. What would your advice be to someone of that age that wanted to, do what you do? And then, because like you started at 49. I guess my other question is, what's your advice for someone in there who's at 49? But it's also like, well, if you can wind the clock back 20 years and instead of having to wait 20 years, you could start today. Like, what would that advice be? And how would you get them to get up to speed quickly? Like, what would your advice for the younger guys?
Depending on your risk, and how. But if a 30-year-old wanted to buy property and live in it, I would say
30-year-old has nothing. Right, 30-year-olds just starting out. They earn 150K a year. They've worked their little butts off, doing a PAYG job, and that's what they're going to continue to do. But they're like, I've heard about this property development thing.
Yeah, I would. Well, I'd say rent, vest, and buy property to subdivide. That's what I'd say. So go, rent in the area that you'd like to live. And do some deep dive into, even if you go into some really great regional areas, and look at properties, look at areas that are selling well, and that you can still get good value for money, and do a subdivision. Sell the land, keep the house. Sell the land, and if you can keep your property positively geared in those regional areas, and rent. That's probably what I would suggest, because then you've got something that's having residual growth, but keep it positively geared.
Yep.
Either that, or if you want to live where you buy, make sure you buy property that has future potential for good subdivision down the track. So always think about future adding value. Don't buy a townhouse. Don't buy what I build.
Buy the problem, not the solution, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Love it. Okay, and what about your advice to someone who's 49 years old and just, has that's just looking at this stuff? They've actually had that kind of coming to Jesus moment of like, oh shit, I've got a little bit of cash here, but I'm looking forward and I don't like what I see. I need to start taking some action. What's your kind of advice for those type of folks? Because there's a lot of people out there that are in that situation.
Yeah. There's a few things you could probably do. One of them is, if you were interested in development, you could team up with a developer who's got experience, who's got runs on the board, and invest with them if you haven't got enough, or if you're too nervous to do your own, and get them to teach you on the way.
Mm-hmm.
So you could be a money partner, and get a developer to show you all the steps and basically hold your hand through the whole development, and you're making good money. Usually you're making anywhere between 12 and 20% on your money. Or if you really want to jump all the way in and do what I did, which is sell everything, go and do a really well reputed course that other people recommend, and network, and start looking for your own property. But I would actually just recommend I would recommend being a money partner for a good developer who knows what they're doing.
There you go. I think that that sort of epitomizes sort of it'll take some time to probably find that person, because a lot of and maybe you might actually do one and you might not get kind of the experience or knowledge of that person that you expected, but you'll even get knowledge and experience from that experience, actually.
Yeah. I mean, it depends on what you want to do. If you want to be a developer, that's a great way to learn. So
yeah.